Guys, if you're watching this, you get at least some of your news from social media. And don't get me wrong, I work really hard to try to report verifiable facts, but I wanted to look at a shocking story from earlier today, it taking place in Russia, that I think shows just how toxic the social media space in this conflict has become. So let's talk a little bit real quick about what exactly I'm talking about. Well, this is in the Republic of Dagestan in Russia. Now, Dagestan, Russia, is a semi-independent republic within Russia. It is overwhelmingly Muslim. You can see it's from the Caucasus regions, particularly. It has a reputation of being very near and adjacent to Chechnya, a contested breakaway region where Russia fought two major conflicts in the 90s. But you also, of course, it's also important for the story. It's Muslim majority, but again, is culturally extremely Caucasian, but from the Caucasus, all right? And is also home to a bunch of world-ranked MMA fighters and wrestlers. But that's not important. The important part is what has happened, right? And there's essentially what has occurred is that at the God help me, the Makhachkala airport. This is the main airport into and out of Dagestan. Here it is on the map. You can see here, right, major airport into and out of the Caucasus, just north of Azerbaijan. At this airport, hundreds of demonstrators broke in, blocked the runway, and attempted to board a plane that was arriving from Israel. This was last evening. And the reason they did this is because there were rumors circulating around social media, particularly on Telegram, that Russian authorities were planning to resettle, quote, Israeli refugees in Dagestan and in the North Caucasus. First off, it is not at all clear that there are any Israeli refugees from this conflict. The conflict is taking place entirely in Gaza. So just a small amount of critical thinking would tell you everything you need to know about whether this story was true or not. Are there Israeli Jews living in Gaza? Basically, no. And that's where the conflict is primarily taking place, right? There is very limited evacuation orders that have been given very locally in this conflict, right? The area, for example, here, I'll show you on the map, where Israel has done evacuations is along these towns along the Lebanon border. Of course, settlements in and around Gaza, right? The outside of Gaza around here. And so you can see this is a small portion of the Israeli territory, and the rest of the country can comfortably absorb these Israeli internally displaced persons. There's no need to resettle them in Russia. And I highly doubt that any Israeli certainly Israeli, is going to want to resettle in the heavily Muslim Caucasus region. So just applying a little common sense should have told you that this seems like a pretty suspicious story. But nonetheless, this didn't stop hundreds of demonstrators gathering at a hotel in Dagestan to look for what they said were, quote, suspected Israeli refugees based on similar rumors. An unknown actors reportedly set fire to a Jewish cultural center under construction in a neighboring Kabardino-Balkarian Republic. These rumors appear to have started with a local Dagestani Telegram channel claiming that Israeli refugees were staying in this hotel in Dagestan, and then, of course, which prompted immediate demonstrations. The Telegram channel demanded that they stage demonstrations at the airport and posted flight tracker data for the plane from Israel. And it sounds like the plane really did come from Israel, but the demonstrators actually blocked everyone in the airport, demanded identification documents, searching for Israeli citizens, but there weren't actually any Israeli citizens, right? Everyone arriving was probably Dagestanis or Russians trying to leave Israel. Demonstrators chanted things that I can't repeat on YouTube, but you can make your best guess. and of course tried to get, physically confront airport security personnel. So this is troubling for a bunch of reasons. But I think the story that I wanted people to take from this is simply that there's a lot of stuff that's being said on social media. There's a lot of stuff that's being reported. I'm trying really hard to make sure that what we report are or at least relatively well-sourced, relatively verifiable facts. And the more salacious and wild the story sounds, the more we need to run it down. And even that rule, right, it kind of backfired on me since, the hospital strike in Gaza seemed seemed fairly apparent that it would have been Israeli in origin, and I was wrong. Evidence contradicted that. So the point of this statement is that there seems to be in certain media moments in at least the English language media space where we pass this point where common sense and critical thinking and nuance occurs. And at some point where you get enough people talking and getting worked up about something, and the more worked up each side gets, the more worked up the other side gets, you end up in a situation where we don't think about what we're seeing, what we're reading, what we're consuming. Our desire to take action or to say something online or in person, or God forbid, actually do something in the public space, overwhelms our ability to think critically. And I guess this is when we look at another country, I see my audience data. There's no one, as far as I can tell, from the Caucasus here. But when we see these stories in the Caucasus, we can identify that this is the result of some really lies, probably something actually done to maybe by a foreign actor deliberately to embarrass the Russian government, because this is definitely embarrassing for them. But that might be the cause of this sort of thing. But when we see it in another country, we can understand. We can look as outsiders and say, "Wow, they really let their passions take them over and believe a bunch of things that are pretty nonsensical." But we don't often do it to ourselves. So again, there's not a ton of news. There's not been a ton of official statements by the Israelis. So this is the news update. I wanted to take a second and just encourage people to think a little harder about what you're reading and seeing online, because again, we're passing this point culturally in the Western language media where we're thinking about what we're saying and doing. Anyway, that's all I had, guys. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of our members of combatvetnews.com, my personal site where you can get access to exclusive content. The link is in the description. I really couldn't do this without you guys. Advertisers don't want to touch this content. So I depend on you guys for everything. And thank you so much. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.